Hi, welcome to our podcast, Woman of Purpose. Today we're going to wrap up our episode on worry, anxiety, and fear. And we have my friend and mentor, Kim Ángulo here. And the last episode we talked about the definition of fear and worry and anxiety and kind of where that comes from. It's a real thing, and we don't want to deny that it's a real thing. But the hope is that we can shed some light on things that we don't have to, as women, live with anxiety and fear and worry, that we can actually do something about it.
Exactly. And do something about it, Shar, so that we're just not, putting up with it,
Right.
and learning to kind of, be able to handle it, but actually, eliminate what is, worry,
Right.
which is an excessive and persistent, anxiety. I think it was anxiety.
Yeah.
Worry is to give a way to anxiety or unease, and it is an excessive and persistent worry about everyday things. And so we don't want to just learn to control it. We want to learn to really just deal with that little tiny bit of anxiety, which is normal when you confront something that's new or a different situation, but not that excessive, persistent worry that brings anxiety that takes you into fear.
Irrational thinking.
Yes.
Overthinking things. We said earlier that focusing on it, and you give empowerment to the anxiety. So we don't want to deny that it is a thing, but we want to deny its power in my life.
Exactly.
Power in your life. And so some of the things that can cause, physically anxiety, worry, it can cause, we talked about that a little bit before we started recording, is, like the panic attacks.
Yeah.
Anxiety can cause like sweating, sleeplessness.
Yes, the physical things that are real.
That are very real.
That are very real, and many times are confused with a physical condition.
Right.
And
which
so
causes more fear.
Right.
And worry.
It does. And then on top of that, if you go to a doctor and all the results come out well on the tests or whatever they do, it's kind of like, no, but this is real. My heart does beat rapidly,
Right.
or I am short of breath, or it's true, I can't sleep, or for example, trembling, And so really anxiety is put into like mental health, mental and emotional health, but it affects us.
Yeah.
It can affect us physically.
Yeah.
And so it's important to identify
Right.
what it really is, so that, we're not being over excessively worrying about a physical condition, when if we can deal with what is the anxiety or the worry,
Right.
then the physical things are just going to line up into the good health that we really do have.
Right, exactly. And not only does it affect our physical bodies, when I dealt with anxiety, it was hard for me to sleep because it was hard for me to fall asleep because your mind does
going
not
continually.
stop.
Yeah.
It's like this thing, but then you feel like you really are going crazy, like there's something majorly wrong with you. But we said in the episode beforehand, it's like when we can understand and stop and think about, what am I thinking about so excessively?
Yes.
Like, where did this come from? And then deal with that instead of allowing ourselves to continue on.
Exactly. And sometimes there's things, like we talked about evaluating, and evaluating and learning to ask yourselves, the questions, questions like, why is this taking me to such an extreme of worry? What is the worst case scenario that could happen? And then you realize that, there are some things that could happen that would be very disagreeable,
Right.
or that we wouldn't want to happen, but it's not a life and death situation. It's not something that we can't overcome.
Right.
So if we can evaluate and we can really, the thing of it is that, a lot of people are very objective, And then there's other people who have the tendency to be more subjective. So they take everything real personal. Well, to evaluate properly, we have to take kind of like a neutral stance on this and say, okay, let's put aside my perceptions of this and let's just focus on evaluating this from an objective perception so that I can, discover the truths in this to help me really say, hey, this is irrational. This, this is excessive thinking. This, is not going to happen, And one of the things too is one of the things that when we're talking about fear and stuff like that, there's a few things that I think a lot of times people feel and, they accept it like kind of like normal. But like when we talked about like anxiety, it's excessive and persistent. Mm-hmm. So for example, feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. If you're feeling overwhelmed all the time, you might be dealing with anxiety and fear. Yeah. Or feeling, for example, continually feeling out of control. And a person who feels out of control, they feel paralyzed. Like, there's nothing that they do. They never do enough to get back into control. If, it kind of feels like, people have asked me, do you know how to swim? And I said, I know how to dog paddle, And so a lot of times that feeling out of control is like you feel like you're continually dog paddling to keep your head above water, And another thing that is related with fear is dread. People, they just dread going to work. They dread getting up in the morning. Yeah. They dread different situations. Yeah. And that is a symptom of fear. When that is persistent and excessive, that is a symptom of fear. Yeah. Which comes from anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. And other things like being critical.
Yes.
We talked earlier, being crabby, sensitive. And I think a really big one also is isolation.
Yes.
So it's like you've got all of this dread, all of this fear. So then to fix it, you just isolate, which means that you don't allow yourself to let people in, and you don't, seek friendships, and then, you isolate from reality.
Right.
And which causes more fear.
And we were talking about that in the last podcast of how relationships are so important. Relationships that build you up, relationships that challenge you, relationships that can help you be who you really are, draw out the best in you.
Yeah. And just like you were talking about how, some are subjective and objective. If a person has a hard time being objective, that's when we need people in our life to say, help me see the truth, so that I'm not in this pit of anxiety, worry, and fear. And when you've got somebody that can actually shed light on something, they have a different perspective because they're not in that pit.
Exactly.
But they're there to be able to help us see things differently, to help us get out of that pit so that we can actually determine why we continue on this path.
Right. And I think too, it would be really good and opportune to just say that, when we have a friend who is dealing with anxiety and fear, it's to make sure that, because if we are objective, it's not to say, well, you shouldn't feel that way.
Exactly.
But it is saying, I understand you.
Right.
I know how you feel, but the truth is this.
Correct.
But this is,
correct.
Really what the correct perception, because that is so important. Like when I counsel with people, I always say, because people need to hear the truth. If they don't hear the truth, they will stay where they are.
Exactly.
Because we have a reality that to us is very real, and we think that reality is the truth.
Right.
No, there is a higher truth.
Right.
There is a better future for each and every one of us. Each and every one of our lives should grow in well-being in all the areas.
And purpose.
And exactly.
Yes.
Living a purpose, because well-being is living a life where you find your purpose. You find out the why.
Right.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I going to leave behind? So, when I counsel, women and stuff like that, I always tell them, I understand.
Mhm.
I know, I
Right.
understand what you're feeling, and I can comprehend how you feel that way and how you're thinking like that. But this is truth for you. This is the truth for you.
Right.
And when people hear truth, then hope comes in. And I think that that's so important, because to be a good friend,
Yeah.
you want to help people come out of where they are. But you can't be insensitive. You can't say, well, you shouldn't feel that way.
Right.
You feel that way when you're
Yeah.
such a successful, career woman. You feel that way. You've got a good marriage and you feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
that's important.
I've definitely have heard that through my life. It's like, what, huh? But it's like acknowledging that yes, anxiety is real in your life. Yes, worry is real. Fear is real. But the truth is this.
Yes, you can live something else.
Yes.
You don't need to live with it.
Right.
You don't need to live controlled
And
by
it's
it.
not your identity.
Right. That is not who you
not
are.
who you are. You were not born with it. It's something that we've learned. It's especially right now in the season that we're living in the world with economy, pandemic, all of those kind of things. It's like it's the world. It's
Yes.
like you can't turn on the TV without having fear, anxiety, worry. You can't go get gas without fear. How in the world am I gonna?
Yep.
We're driving into town today, and gas went up 10 cents already.
Yep.
From yesterday.
Yes.
So immediately, if I'm not careful, I can take on worry. How in the world am I going to do this? What's going to happen tomorrow? How much is gas?
Yes.
And I have to stop my thinking and choose. I'm not going to allow myself to think that way.
Right. And I think there is at least like when the whole COVID thing came out, I remember, there was in Argentina, there was just this complete lockdown.
Yeah.
I mean, a complete lockdown. Right. You were given certain days that you could go to the supermarkets and all that kind of stuff. It was just really, really strange. And I remember like the first two, you don't realize, like you're sitting there and you're watching the news. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, that consumed, because this was all new and all this lockdown. Right. And all that kind of stuff. And, legislating, what are we going to do and how are we going to handle this, the government and stuff like that. Well, then a second week goes by and we're sitting there thinking, how long is this going to go on? And we can't keep sitting here just watching the news. We gotta, even though we can't go anywhere, right. we've got to live a productive life. Yeah. So one of the things that, I've told people, if listening, I'm not talking about not being informed, because we need to be informed about some stuff. But if listening to the news provokes worry and anxiety, don't listen to it. Don't listen to it because it's we need to come out of anxiety. We need to come out of worry and fear. And so if I keep feeding it, if I keep focusing on it, I'm empowering it. Correct. So I will not get out of it. So sometimes we need to make decisions like, for example, say, I'm not going to listen to it. It doesn't, and I'm not talking about not being informed. Right. I'm talking about not focusing on it, not feeding yourself on it.
If you can't watch the news without getting the information, with just getting information, then you shouldn't watch it. Right. Because it really will spin you into a whole nother thing.
Yes, it will.
All of this, the worry, the anxiety, and the fear, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. And what it does is it takes us out of being present and throws us into future. The what ifs, all the what ifs. We can't handle. We can't.
Yes.
We can't. We have to take that power back and say, okay, I don't want to live like this anymore. That there is something better, and it is possible.
It is possible. It is
very, very possible. And what is, Kim? We talked about this actually the other day, sitting at the kitchen table. Talk about what can a person do that is filled with anxiety, fear, and worry. We talked about truth.
Yes.
And how can I, if I'm struggling in this area, or how can I help somebody be free and from this thing of anxiety.
I think one of the things that we mentioned about is evaluating, and I think too is one of the things is if we say, okay, we're going into worry, so we have to focus on the opposite, which would be trust and confidence.
Yeah.
So we have to start focusing on that. Like first of all, like there's just a wide spectrum of a whole bunch of things related to trust and confidence, but like trust leads us into confidence, which means if I can't trust, then I can't build confidence in my life. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm going to live as a woman who is continually insecure, don't have confidence. I'm not sure, insecurities and all that kind of stuff. So we have to, first of all, trust, that there is a better future and a good future for my life. And that I as a woman am created and designed with a purpose, and I have a special design. I'm unique. Yeah. Every woman is unique, and every woman is special. Mm-hmm. And she's got something that is gonna make her world better one way or another. And I'm not talking about having a career, being a professional or whatever. I can be a stay-home mom. And when I go out into my community, I can change people's lives with a smile, with just encouragement, with good words. And can be part of my purpose. Yeah. So first of all, it's a trust that there is a good future for my life. There is, I can live a good present, and there is a good future for my life. Trust that, and that will help me to have confidence to make the changes that I need to make, and which is focusing on truth. Yeah. You know?
So trust, when I can trust that there is a better way, I love what you said, that we are designed uniquely. That's one of my passions for women, is that we are not a cookie cutter woman.
No,
I am not you. As much as I love you and you're my mentor, you're my example. And I always say, when I grow up, I want to be just like you, but I don't want to be you.
Right.
I don't want to be you. I don't want to walk in your shoes.
Right.
I want to walk in my shoes.
Exactly.
And so I think when we realize that, wait a minute, I can trust that there is a better way, that there is something, there is a life that I can live without living it with anxiety and fear constantly. Like you said, the persistent thing of fear, worry, and anxiety. So it's this trust. And you said earlier that trust is what brings us hope.
Right. When, when we're talking about trust, one of the things, or one of the definitions of trust is it's a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Mm-hmm. So, to be women of purpose, we need to, first of all, trust the fact that there is ability and strength in who I am, even though I haven't discovered it. And maybe my life is today really messed up. Maybe, maybe I'm living everything I never wanted to live, but I have to start, because trust is a firm belief, which means trust is hope and faith that this can change. Yeah. And that will give me confidence, because if I don't have confidence, I will never step out to make the changes that I need to make. And when we talk about making changes, you said it in the last podcast about women of purpose is to bring about transformation. Yes. I think you said. Yeah. And transformations is when I quit being who I thought I was, who I thought I was, to be who I really am. Yeah. Because every woman is created and designed by God to walk in freedom, to walk in liberty, to walk in their God-given grace and abilities and talents and interests, and to be successful, not successful like, in the definition of somebody else. You're successful if you earn, so many
Right.
digit, successful, being happy, living fulfilled.
Yeah.
And there are women who, they love painting and they paint and they just feel fulfilled in that, or people who love flowers, or people who are creative in other things, or like caring for the elderly. Those are graces in us. And so we have to start having a trust really of, hey, I have to believe that I am created for in God's given design to be a woman of purpose, a woman who walks in freedom. And that doesn't mean that we have a life that's without difficulties or without situations or adversity. It means that we can overcome them.
Yes.
And we're not going to be crippled by it.
Right.
We're not going to be limited by it.
Right. It's that trust, and it brings us into confidence. And I love that you said it's faith, because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It's like, even though I don't see it, that I am that woman, there's something inside of all of us that wants to be and knows that we can be different.
Right.
And I think that if you're listening to this and this is you, it's like it is already in you. It's been already deposited in you in the womb.
Right.
To be able to be that unique woman that you were called and designed to be. And then life happens. We learn fear.
Yes.
We learn things that were never in us.
Right. And because it is learned, we can unlearn it.
Yes. That's
and
the beautiful thing of it.
Yeah, that is the exciting thing, is that it's not mine. It's something that I learned. Just like when you learn to do something, wrong, or you learn to do something maybe one way and there's a better way, you can learn that better way. Yeah. And so when you learn that better way, then you leave the way that is not as effective. And in this, we learned something that is really hurting and harming our lives and damaging, stealing from us and keeping us from being all who we are. Right. So we can learn to trust. No, I'm going to trust that there is a good future for my life. I'm going to trust that I am designed to be a woman of purpose and I can be all who I am called to be. And because that does give us faith, we don't necessarily see it, but I love what you said. It activates something in us, and because it activates us, it motivates us. Yeah. It motivates us to make those changes for a transformation. Yeah. We're not just changing little things here, like when you change the furniture in your house. You're taking out the old, and you are discovering the real.
Yeah. I love there's a scripture in Romans 12:2 where it says that we don't conform to this world, but we're transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that word transformed is the same word used when a caterpillar is metamorphosed into a butterfly. And the interesting thing about that, I've read about it a lot. I still don't know a lot about it, but the caterpillar finds a place and spins a cocoon around itself. But the interesting thing is that the caterpillar has to die before the butterfly can take form. But the interesting thing is that inside of the caterpillar, so while the caterpillar is still a caterpillar, inside of the caterpillar is a butterfly.
Exactly. And do you know that science says that there are the two DNAs. There is the DNA of the caterpillar, but the butterfly DNA is activated. Yeah. And that is the beautiful thing about even like with this podcast, because this podcast activates the DNA
of the
butterfly, of the one that allows us to fly, where we're not limited. We're not going to crawl around on the ground. Right. We are going to fly, and we're going to be all who we're called to be. Yeah. And when truth does that, truth, because what does truth do? What does truth do? Truth activates hope and faith in us. Yeah. It activates hope. Yeah. And then when there's hope, then we can say, I can believe that. And then I trust that. And that brings me into confidence. And then confidence will help me to make the decisions that I need to make for the changes, for the transformation.
Yeah.
And that is just wonderful.
It's so wonderful. We're going to wrap up this episode of Woman of Purpose, and we're going to continue on here and touch some more on this thing of being transformed and a couple more tools for these women to be able to live life with a purpose without having anxiety, fear, and worry. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Woman of Purpose.